I truly support Minister Fedorov, and I think even though there were some questions to the deliverables of him as a minister, 6 months is definitely not enough to show all the results of all the reforms and all the implementations. Right. So I rarely criticize President Zelensky, but right now I think it was a mistake.
Kira Rudyk in Ukraine today. It's his last visit there as Prime Minister. We can listen to some of what he had to say speaking at a news conference alongside the Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky.
I say very clearly the UK support for Ukraine will not waver. And I say that with real confidence because it has not wavered since the outbreak of this conflict. There has been cross-party unity on this. There's been unity within parties. And there is a resolve of the British people. It is really significant that now, in the 5th year of this conflict, the Ukrainian flag still flies above Downing Street. It still flies across churches and town halls across the country and individual gardens, because the British people understand what is being fought for here. Freedom and democracy, values that we will never take for granted. And therefore we know that this fight is our fight.
Kira Rudyk speaking earlier. And meanwhile, there are protests in Ukrainian cities over the dismissal of the Defence Minister, Fedorov. It's a big shake-up of the Ukrainian government. Kira Rudyk joins us live on the line, the Ukrainian MP who's leader of the opposition Holos party. Kira, welcome as always.
Hello, John, and thank you so much for having me.
Good to have you here, Kira. So President Zelensky, he's reshuffled his ministers and removed Fedorov, the defence minister. He's credited, isn't he, with transforming Ukraine's military strength through drone power and technology. What is your view on his sacking?
So I truly support Minister Fedorov, and I think even though there were some questions to the deliverables of him as a minister, 6 months is definitely not enough to show all the results of all the reforms and all the implementations. From what we have seen, he was very successful in the delivering drones to Ukraine, in implementing innovations into Ukrainian army procurement, and finding the asymmetric steps that we definitely need to be able to fight against Russia. One of the great examples of his work is it's agreeing with Elon Musk to turn off Starlinks for Russian army. This made them blind for, I think, a couple of months at least, and it allowed us to make an incredible strides forward in defending our country and in regaining some of our territories. Right. So I rarely criticize President Zelensky, but right now I think it was a mistake.
Okay, so Fedorov is credited with, as you say, with the advances in drones and technology, which are seen as a bit of a game changer in the war with Russia. Where is he seen to have fallen short then? Are we talking about the shortage of personnel on the front line?
Absolutely. So we need to be realistic. And one of the goals that Minister Fedorov had was fixing the mobilization problem that exists in Ukraine and finding a way so people who are fighting since 2022 would have a path of coming back home. Because it's really unfortunate that there are people who have not been mobilized and there are people who are fighting for all of us. And we need to balance this injustice and figure out how to fix it. And this was one of his tasks. And President said that this was something that he was dissatisfied with. I'm not happy about it as well, but I think 6 months may not be enough to go ahead with such a massive plan and execute on it.
I suppose getting more soldiers to the front line, Kira, I imagine would be very, very, very difficult. And how do you achieve that? Are we talking about more compulsion, in which case you're dealing with a potentially really quite unpopular policy?
Absolutely. Well, nobody wants to implement an unpopular policy. I would say neither Minister Fedorov nor President Zelensky, but we are at the situation right now in the middle of the war where somebody just has to have and take this responsibility. And this is why we have really high and intense hopes that the solution that President have just found, it's appointing an interim Minister of Defense of the Chief of Ukraine's internal security, that it would work and help specifically in a way of fixing mobilization. He also promised that Minister Fedorov will stay in the team and will be helping to deliver on the goal of Ukraine defending itself. But it is very uncertain what's going to happen, and we didn't hear any specifics about that.
I read that Fedorov is quite popular with a lot of Ukrainians, and I also read that perhaps that makes the President Zelensky, nervous. He sees a potential future political rival. Is there any truth in that?
Absolutely. People find really the ones who are really popular and who are supporting and very successful at the time of the war as their heroes. And Minister Fedorov perhaps is one of those heroes. But the thing that upsets everybody, and this is why people went on the streets, is not Minister Fedorov in particular, but the way the reshuffle of the government has been done, without the announcement, without preparation, with the risks that at the toughest times and at these important moments where Ukraine has to prepare for the winter and for potential Russian mobilization, we may be left without the minister, and this is exactly what happened. So I totally can understand the feeling of the people in different cities and on the streets that it just doesn't sound like a good idea that was properly executed. And of course, the message by President Zelensky was not delivered very well.
All right, Kira Rudyk, Ukrainian MP who leads the Holos party. Good to talk to you, Kira. Take care.